This week on Houston Newsmakers, what Houstonians think. The latest results from the Houston area survey. Dr. Steve Klineberg here with the most recent results that dig into what Houstonians think about the transgender and gay rights issues that have risen to the forefront locally and nationally. How does Houston compare to Texas and the rest of the country when it comes to the political landscape? In the hometown of Cruz, is it more likely Clinton or Trump? And amid talk of building a wall along the U.S. border, are Houstonians likely to help or walk away from such a project? And how have attitudes continued to shift in what's seen as the most demographically diverse community in the United States? All that and more on this edition of Houston Newsmakers.
From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
And welcome to Houston Newsmakers. I'm excited about having this half hour with Dr. Stephen Klineberg, the founding director of the Kinder Institute for Urban Research, here this morning to discuss the very latest information from the Houston area survey. Good morning, Dr. Klineberg. Always good to see you. You know how much I'm excited about this segment, right? I'm sorry about stalking you this past year, waiting for this number. Hey, so for those people who don't know, what is the Houston area survey?
So this is a systematic survey reaching a representative random sample of Harris County residents, reached by random telephone numbers, 40% now by cell phones, 60% landline, asking people with identical questions over the years. How do you see the world? What is happening in your life? And we have watched the world change. Houston turns out to be at the forefront of the demographic, economic transformations occurring across all of America, nowhere more clearly seen or more sharply articulated than in Houston, Texas.
How reliable are these results? You talk about the survey. It's a random sampling kind of thing. So what are the numbers that indicate how reliable?
Yeah, so it's a random sample, about 800 folks from Harris County. We added another 400 from Fort Bend and Montgomery counties this year. 800 gives you a margin of error of plus or minus 3.5%. So a change from one year to the next of 6 percentage points could be random fluctuation. Could be no change, but if there's a change of 7 or 8 or 9 percentage points, that could not have happened by chance, and tells you people are answering the question differently today than they did the last time.
What was it about the survey that attracted the attention of Rich and Nancy Kinder? Because the foundation now is the Kinder Institute, because at once upon a time it was just the Houston area survey.
Just me and my undergraduate class.
I know. Well, I'm sorry I wasn't part of that class. But what was it that made them say, you know, this is much bigger than just a class project?
Well, the city has adopted this survey. It's just sort of, you know, each year more and more people showing it. It turns out no city in America has been tracked for this number of years, and no city has undergone the kind of changes that Houston has. So it's a especially valuable kind of snapshot each year of where are we, how are we doing. A one-time survey, is this up or down, is this high or low, is this good or bad? Asking identical questions over time, you can see where we're heading.
Let's talk about one of them now. One of the topics of the survey, very high on everyone's radar at this point in time, and that is the transgender issue. The Houston area survey has been asking opinions about gay rights for a number of years. This year added specific questions about the proposed Houston Equal Rights Ordinance that was among those questions, which turned into the bathroom ordinance by those against it. And it's become a national issue with the White House weighing in as well. What does the survey say about Houstonians' attitudes about that?
Well, it just reminds us of how consequential are the ways in which these things get framed and shaped in public discourse. When you ask people about support for an equal rights ordinance that would protect people from discrimination, 70% of City of Houston voters say this is a very important thing for Houston to pass such an ordinance. 61% voted against the ordinance as it appeared and was interpreted at the ballot box as a bathroom ordinance allowing gender-confused men to use women's bathrooms. So
the disparity between what people are saying and how they're voting.
Big disjuncture between, and a lot of it has to do with how these things get framed in the political rhetoric. A lot of it has to do with whether you're a single-issue voter and take this as an enormously important issue to address, or whether it's just one of many issues that you care about. So the result is that there's always a disjuncture between what we call public opinion, which is what we're measuring when you ask people in the privacy of their homes, how do you see the world, and politically effective opinion. What gets translated into political life?
They may feel a certain way, but they don't feel passionate enough about it to go to the ballot box.
So they don't vote, or they vote on a whole bunch of other issues. And you got single issue voting. The classic example is gun control. 85% of Houstonians are in favor of a background check on all gun sales in the United States. 85%? 85% are in favor of background checks. It's never going to pass the legislature because of the power of lobbies and single-issue voting.
Let's talk about some of the politics and whatnot in terms of how the politics are affected about political affiliation, how these attitudes have changed. Texas is a red state. It's been for quite some time. Harris County, elected officials, almost all Republicans as far as I've seen. And so the survey seems to indicate, I know, that attitudes are changing. It shows, the latest study showed that the change in the political makeup, that this year's survey, 52% of the respondents identify as Democrat, 30% Republican, and that's changed from just 2014, where it was 42% to 35, and in 2005 there were more Republicans than Democrats. What do you count for the change?
Yeah, up until 10 years ago, the story was Harris County, Houston was sort of was more Democrat than Republican, but Harris County as a whole was a 50-50 county. And then starting about 10 years ago, more and more people said they felt closer to the Democratic Party, and fewer people said they felt closer to the Republican Party. And now a gap of over 20 points, higher than it's ever been in the 35 years of surveys.
And that is eye-opening, because is this a trend that people who are like political strategists look at as their hope for turning the red state purple or blue? Right.
So the first question you ask is, okay, who changed and who didn't? And so the short answer is African Americans didn't change. They remain loyal to the Democratic Party. Anglos didn't change, or changed very little. They're still more Republican than Democrat. The group that changed was the Latinos. It was a 50-30 Republican, Democratic preference in the early years to 80-20 today. Just striking move.
And so that's why when political strategists are talking about having to get the Latino vote, that's why, because it's now almost all Democrat. Is that like that across the country, mirrored here in Houston?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's what the other thing is so fascinating about Harris County is that it really is a mirror of the broader changes going on. When we see changes in support for gay rights, for example, it mirrors perfectly the national polls. What I tell people is that, boy, this says to Republicans, reach out to these people. Don't keep pushing them away. Mm-hmm. What it says to Democrats is get out the vote. Right, and you can. So both parties have their work cut out for them, but opportunities there. But left to its own devices, given the sort of anti-immigrant and by implication anti-Latino rhetoric from the Republican Party, has pushed Latinos away from that party, in a party where many feel a real sense of kinship.
Well, this is fascinating for me as always. Dr. Steve Klineberg is going to be with me with the whole program. We got much more to talk about, including the wall. One of the presidential candidates has made that a big part of his talking points. How do Houstonians feel about the wall and immigration? More with Dr. Steve Klineberg when Houston Newsmakers continues. And welcome back to Houston Newsmakers. My guest, Dr. Steve Klineberg, co-founder of the Kinder Institute for Urban Research, who for 35 years, you don't look much older than 35.
I was a very young man.
Has been putting out the survey of Houstonians and their opinions and attitudes about issues in life in Houston. Let's talk about immigration. It's been a topic of conversation for many years. You've had it in the survey for many years, especially early on in this presidential campaign. It's been made a high point of what people are going to talk about. How are we dealing with immigration issues? How are Houstonians thinking about the wall issues? What does your survey say about attitudes that Houstonians have about immigration?
Okay, so I mean, the big story in Houston, right, has been the great growth of the city during the oil boom years of the 60s and 70s was Anglos pouring into the city. This is where the jobs were. After 1982, the Anglo population of Harris County stopped growing. And all the growth of this, the most rapidly growing city in America, all of it has been the influx of African Americans, Latinos, and Asians, and we've become the most ethnically diverse major city in the country. 30 years of being a city of immigrants. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning, a lot of anxiety, and who are these people, why are they coming here, and no one consulted with me before all these people came. And every question we've asked about comfort with diversity, about support for immigration, has shown, with, again, identical questions, samples drawn the same way, increasingly significant improvements in ratings, lessening antagonism, growing sense that this diversity is what Houston is about. So the anti-immigrant attitudes that you find in small pockets around the country, you do not find at all, almost.
It would seem that there would be a good opportunity to find will among enough people in the country so that they could solve whatever immigration problem there is based upon what attitudes are. But you seem to find that people who may say one thing behind the closed doors of their home aren't necessarily as passionate about it to go out and...
Well, that's the key, is how does that get translated into public opinion and public attitude, public action, mm-hmm. and how it gets translated depends an awful lot on who's got the money to influence the Congress, who's going to vote no matter what. So young Latinos voted much lower rates than older, highly educated Anglos, and that's a big part of the challenge.
What is the difference in the demographics among the counties? And it was a Houston area survey, which means you did include some other counties, you included Montgomery and Fort Bend.
So we included Harris. We have Harris County, which we've been doing every year for 35 years, and then we included in the last couple of years Montgomery County and Fort Bend County. Two largest counties surrounding us, although still it's important to remember how over 4.3 million people live in Harris County, about 500,000 live in Fort Bend and Montgomery County. But the big difference is that Fort Bend County is, we think, the most ethnically diverse county in the world.
It's still getting that way.
Fort Bend County today is 20% Asian, 24% Latino, 21% African American, 35% Anglo. You can't get much closer to 1/4, 1/4, 1/4.
Right.
And that's a major measure of how ethnically diverse is a population. How close does it come to equal divisions among the four communities? And then meanwhile, Montgomery County is overwhelmingly still Anglo, although much less than it used to be, Anglo and Latino, and is by some measures the third most Republican county in America. So very interesting opportunity to ask what does the world look like, and how does it feel different if you're looking out from Fort Bend County or from Montgomery County?
It may be, I'm guessing you're the sociologist, but is it a good barometer to look at how that these counties interact and work together, because there's such a difference not only within the counties in terms of diversity, but between the counties, there's
exactly.
a difference as well.
Yeah, but what was striking in the surveys, and one of the key findings, is remarkably little difference. In Montgomery County, the same support for ethnic diversity as you find in Fort Bend County. The same interest in walkable urbanism, almost. I mean, we ask people, how should we spend our money in terms of improving traffic? Almost as high a percentage in Fort Bend and Montgomery County said, spend it on improving rail and buses rather than expanding highways.
We're going to talk about that.
We're one big community here.
It's amazing when you think about what is often said, that we're so much alike. If we sit down and talk to each other, we'll know that we are.
Right.
Let's talk about abortion for a minute. That's been a divisive topic, and you've had that in the survey for a number of years as well. How has that changed, if at all, over the last couple of years?
So that's been fascinating. So we've asked identical questions about abortion attitudes and about gay rights. And every question about abortion rights, questions like, are you in favor or opposed to a law that would make it more difficult for a woman to obtain an abortion? Do you believe abortion is morally wrong, or is it morally acceptable? Do you agree or disagree it should be legal for a woman to obtain an abortion if she wants to have one for any reason? All of those powerful questions have not changed at all in 35 years. And the story of abortion attitudes is that Houstonians are anti-abortion and pro-choice. They are 60% likely to say, I believe abortion is morally wrong, but 65% say, I'm opposed to a law that would make it more difficult for a woman to obtain an abortion. That ability to say, I believe it's wrong, but I recognize that people can be caught in terrible situations where they have to make these terribly difficult decisions. It's a decision I wouldn't make, but a woman has to have a right to make that decision.
That number has been fairly consistent.
And that has not changed
over the years.
Whereas every question we've asked about gay rights, a question, for example, are you in favor or opposed to allowing homosexuals to legally adopt children? 19% were in favor when we first asked that question in 1991, and then 22, 25, 30, 35, 56% in the survey this year. Identical question back in 1991, 56% today say I'm in favor of allowing homosexuals to legally adopt children.
And there's no wonder that people look at this as a barometer and a guidepost of what Houston has been and where it's likely to go from this point forward.
That's right.
We've got more with Dr. Steve Klineberg after this break. We'll talk about the biggest issues in the eyes of Houston area residents. Here's a hint about the biggest. Yeah, traffic. That's next when Houston Newsmakers continues.
From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
And welcome back to Houston Newsmakers, where my guest is Dr. Stephen Klineberg, who started the Houston Area Survey more than 35 years ago. Now, as part of the Kinder Institute for Urban Research, we're talking about this great diversity that we have. But within that great diversity, there's also an inequity that's going on that groups are really not comfortable with.
There is a growing inequality across America. No one denies that anymore. I mean, it's just striking. The redistribution of earnings out of the hands of the poor and the rich. I'm sorry, the poor. Out of the hands of the poor and the middle class into the rich, hands of the rich and the super rich. What we're dealing with, the great challenge we face in America, is not an ethnic divide. We are falling in love with each other, marrying, making multiracial babies. The great challenge is a class divide. and it's a class divide predicated above all else on access to quality education, predicated on jobs that will pay a living wage, and our inability to raise the minimum wage to ensure that people who are working can support a family. And so a big part of what you see politically, I think, in both the Republican and Democratic parties with Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders is a growing explicit call for meaningful reform that can ensure that middle class and poor folks, 60% of American families that have stagnated in the last 20 years, have a real chance to move forward.
Doesn't your survey show that individuals, depending on their race, view it altogether differently? I mean, in terms of what's better. For example, African Americans may view how well race relations are as not as good as whites do. So ethnic differences remain powerfully and importantly, but class differences are also enormously important. Let's talk about where you some of the biggest problems in Houston as far as your survey said. We got a graphic talking about this. Traffic, again, at the top of the list, 29% listing it as their top concern. That's slightly up from last year, way up from what it was 2 and 3 years ago. Economy listed as a top concern by 21%, up 3% from last year. Perhaps maybe heading even higher based upon what's going on in Houston.
You bet. Growing concerns about what's going to happen next year.
Yeah, and now the crime's also 21%, which is about the same as last year. What do these numbers indicate?
So keep in mind that this is an open-ended question, so we don't give them a list and say pick one. We say, what would you say is the biggest problem facing people in the Houston area today? It's the first question we ask. We get our random adult in our random house. So it's what comes to mind, what pops into your, and so
darn traffic. And
it, of course, depends. Did we get them just as they were dealing with? Was it the 6 o'clock news with blood and guts? Was it? But over time, you could see these things emerging. So that the economy was the big preoccupation during the oil bust years of the 80s. Crime was the big preoccupation in the 90s. The economy was again a preoccupation in the early years of, during the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, and now traffic. And traffic is the new normal. We're going to have to find a way to deal with another 1 million people moving into Harris County, another 3 million into the greater Houston metropolitan area, and still have access and mobility. And so there's growing awareness that traffic is going to be a problem. We're going to have to find alternative ways to get around than just total dependence on the automobile.
And the mayor's call for diversity of traffic systems, so perhaps he's addressing that concern as well.
I think this is a new awareness. We all know that we need to find new ways to grow if we're going to succeed in it.
How about the economy? Because the numbers that were talking about the economy that was a high concern, now we have this oil issue that the numbers are going down, we're losing jobs like crazy, and your survey showed that people are still pretty optimistic.
Yes, it's a good reminder. I mean, when the oil bust occurred, the big bust in 1982, 80% of all the jobs in this city in 1980 were tied into the price of oil. We did oil the way Detroit did cars, the way Seattle did airplanes. Now, it depends how you measure it, it's something like 45%. We have the Texas Medical Center, the largest medical complex in the world. We have the second largest port in the country, the gateway to the global marketplace. So we're not as dependent on oil. And we have downstream oil as well as upstream oil. Downstream oil benefits of petrochemicals and plastics from the lower cost of feedstock. So it's a serious challenge because oil and gas production remain enormously important in the Houston economy. When we had $100 oil, the exhilaration and the boominess was just palpable. We were full percentage point below the national average in unemployment. We're now 1/10 of a percentage point below the national average. So a lot of economists are concerned that we've been riding the momentum of the previous oil boom, and that if it doesn't turn around, and most people think it's not going to turn around anytime very soon, Houston will begin to feel some of the consequences of this of the oil.
What was your big takeaway from this year's survey when you came away from it, other than the fact that you found people were so optimistic?
I think that was one of the things that stood out. I was surprised at the optimism. It's not quite as optimistic as it was last year, but remarkably high still. And with the other thing that's so interesting in Houston is people complain in our surveys because we invite them to about traffic, pollution, crime, the weather, the no mountains, the flying cockroaches. And we say, well, how would you rate the Houston area as a place to live? It's a wonderful place to live. And when we first asked that question, 70% said it's excellent or a good place to live. Today, with all of the downturn, all the concerns, 81%.
Wow, up.
It was up from ever before.
More outdoor activities as well, I noticed, getting out in the parks and out
we could track that, asking people how often did you visit, is there a park within a mile of your home, and how often have you visited in the last year? Is there a bayou trail within a mile of your home? And watching both more people saying that they had access to these amenities and significant increases in the percent saying they visited. and made use of them. And that's a power, as we begin to make these remarkable improvements in quality of life and access to amenities of various sorts, people use them. You see what's happening in the parks and the bayou greenways. That is just really very exciting.
Less than a minute left. You start working on your book about this survey.
Yes.
What are you going to put in that book?
Well, I'm going to try to make the case that Houston is one of the most interesting and consequential cities in America. Houston is at the cusp of the changes that are occurring across all of this country, happening here first. We are where all of America is going to be in about 20 to 25 years. All of America will look like Houston looks today.
You're getting national attention for the survey in terms of the diversity of the city?
So increasingly people are understanding, but there's still the general picture of Houston is a throwback to 30 years ago.
Okay, most important question of the day, when you write the book, you coming over, give me a signed copy?
Absolutely.
Dr. Klineberg, always good to see you.
You too. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. And we hope you love the information you got from this year's survey as well. You can get the survey, very easy to do. Go to kinder.rice.edu to get the survey and find out the details about all the other things the Institute is doing. Dr. Klineberg, thank you so much. I got copies here, and I'm going to be selling them in the newsroom. I mean, they don't know it doesn't cost anything, right? Dr. Steve Klineberg, thank you very much. Hey, coming up next, we'll talk about what we have coming up next week, about the summer swim season ahead, when Houston Newsmakers continues. Next week here on Houston Newsmakers, the start of summer right around the corner means drowning deaths will most likely head up. Doesn't have to be that way. We'll talk about some of the ways and programs that will be in place to cut down on that challenging problem of summer in Houston. And we'll have a visit from NASA to talk about the plans for its upcoming journey to Mars and much more they're doing to further space exploration. I'll have a special astronaut guest as well. Thank you to Dr. Steve Klineberg for being here. Hope you enjoyed that. Have a great day, and I'll see you back here again next week.